President Donald Trump's second campaign for president was one of unfinished business. It just was very clear that he wasn't done after 2020, and he had a lot more to do, and so did the people working for him, not to mention the voters who wanted him to be in for a second term.
The Trump dance took off, man. Trump was genuine. Trump was authentic. Even the stuff you don't like about Trump is authentic. And we were at a time in our country where that's what we needed more than anything else.
In 2024, America was tired of being told that chaos was normal, that prices had to rise, that borders had to stay open, that decline was inevitable. And then Donald Trump stepped back onto the stage, not with polished or poll-tested slogans, but with raw fire and a promise. We're going to take our country back. The crowd didn't just cheer, they surged. Flags flew, fists rose, and a movement that never really left was reignited with something bigger than before. This wasn't about Trump the man. It was about what he stood for: strength, sovereignty, and unapologetic grit.
My first day back in the White House, I'll terminate every open borders policy of the Biden administration, stop the invasion on our southern border, and begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history.
From day one, Trump made it clear he wasn't running to govern politely. He was running to shake things up, not to just fix a broken system, but to tear it down and rebuild. Deportations would start. The wall would be finished.
No tax on tips. No tax on overtime. And no tax on Social Security for our great seniors.
Inflation crushed.
Immediately start with energy. I would drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill. Protect Social Security. Cut the red tape. Attack fraud, waste, and abuse in our government. These weren't just applause lines. They were blueprints.
President Trump was someone who worked on construction sites his entire life. He was always in touch with the people doing the work in the economies that he was talking about. So he had this personal experience with the very people who were showing up at his rallies, and he was able to talk to them in a way that nobody else really could. It's the reason why he got the nickname blue-collar billionaire, because he was able to really speak the language of people that politicians generally can't get through to them. And so his rallies became just a discussion with the very people who wanted to vote for him.
The left mocked it. The pundits rolled their eyes. But in diners, barbershops, and break rooms across the country, those promises hit home.
And the backdrop of this was that Joe Biden was president.
Then after the debacle of the Biden administration, after the atrocious neglect of basic security on our border, the appetite was here. We were ready. You even had Democrats. This is an 80-20 issue right now, where a majority of Democrats want that border secure.
The country was in a complete free fall. And so Donald Trump wanted to fix a lot of this stuff and was promising that on day one, he planned to start doing it.
Let's not forget that in 1986, when Ronald Reagan was sort of forced into a negotiated deal for immigration reform, part of that deal was that we were going to secure the border in 1986. And then it was forgotten. Congress never allocated funds for it. No president after Reagan had the will to actually secure the border, and it never happened. We had heard president after president, mostly Republicans, promise to secure that border, and they wouldn't do it. Trump made a big deal out of it, and we knew he would follow through.
So President Trump just was authentic, and he was able to go out and talk to people, and he was never faking it. And even when he was working at McDonald's or driving the garbage truck, he was able to really associate with the very people who wanted to vote for him and the thousands, millions of people who showed up at his rallies over and over again.
I think what made a big difference this time around was, number one, we knew he was going to follow through, and number two, everybody wanted it. Everybody.
People weren't looking for politics or pretty words. They were looking for results. And Trump wasn't begging for their support. He was earning it. But the other side wasn't just campaigning. They were prosecuting. Courtrooms became battlegrounds. The headlines bled outrage.
Then you move forward to the gap between 2020 and 2024.
May 3rd, 2024 is a date in history. It is the conviction of a former president of the United States.
And you have Democrats and their friends in the legal field and their friends in the media saying, we cannot allow Donald Trump not to just win again, but to run for president again.
It is just unquestionable at this point that that man cannot see public office again.
Voters saw the system for what it had become: weaponized, political, a tool of the elite to keep the status quo.
So you saw lawsuit after lawsuit, charges, felony charges in New York over cases that nobody had ever seen before. The onslaught was just nonstop.
A federal search warrant issued and executed at the home of the former president of the United States.
The FBI has reportedly executed a search of former President Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago.
I can tell you now officially that former President Donald J. Trump has been criminally indicted.
Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts.
The lawfare was supposed to be something the left could use to keep President Trump from regaining the White House. But in fact, it backfired because everyday Americans saw it as anti-American.
If you are a threat to power, they will try to just destroy you. And I do believe that, Americans love the story of a lone man battling a corrupt system with his back against the wall.
It's a very sad thing that's happening in our country, but I'm honored to be involved in it because somebody has to do it, and I might as well keep going and be the one, because I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save our country and to save our Constitution.
Every indictment put Trump back in the forefront. Every mugshot raised more money. Every legal attack was answered with louder chants.
The narrative from the left had gotten so heated.
They ended up taking a guy who was already a president before, where everyone had a strong opinion about him. Most people sort of saw him as abrasive and even obnoxious. He is a New Yorker, after all. Somehow they made this man into one of the most sympathetic figures in public life. They actually made people feel sorry for him because we all saw through it. We all saw what they were trying to do, this coordinated effort to go after him. And they dragged his name and his reputation and his image through the mud in such a vitriolic way that it even inspired someone to take a shot at him, inspired somebody to try to put a bullet in his brain.
He is not only unfit, he is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
Then came July 13th, Butler, Pennsylvania.
Take a look at what happened.
A rally like so many before it, but this one ended with a bullet. The bullet missed by less than half of an inch. Half of an inch closer, and the 2024 campaign would have ended in blood and chaos.
President Trump had just taken the stage in Butler, and it was just like any other rally. And all of a sudden, I'm walking by the TV, and I see him do this, and then my colleague says, he's been hit, he's been hit. And I turned my head to look at the television, and I saw him drop to the floor. And at that point, nobody knew what had happened. Like, he obviously was hit because he had put his hand on his ear, but what did that really mean? Like, was it more severe? Was it a grazing? Was he going to be able to get up? And then all of a sudden, he gets up after you hear him say, "Let me get my shoes," and he gets up. And he throws his fist in the air as the Secret Service is trying to get him off the stage. And he says, "Fight, fight, fight," with this blood streaming across his face.
You ask how this assassination attempt may have affected things when we saw him stand up, when everybody saw him stand up. Tell us all to fight with him instead of stay down on the ground and let the bad times pass. That was the representation of the entire campaign. It was a representation of where we were as a country. Not only did they turn him into a sympathetic character, they turned him into a fighter, fighting for us.
And at that moment, you just knew that the people behind him who were there to support him were also in harm's way. And you couldn't help but think about the other people who had been hurt in that instance and people we found out had been killed. You just saw him, again, fighting after he'd been through all of this, under attack for months and months through lawfare, through false narratives. And again, nobody really knew what was happening. Nobody knew how injured the president was, and everybody was just waiting in disbelief about how could this happen in America and us get to this point.
Trump didn't fall. He didn't hide. He stood, bleeding, defiant, fist in the air, shouting what would become a battle cry.
Fight, fight, fight.
That image, red rivulets running down his face, fury in his voice, it was a turning point. It wasn't about politics anymore. It was about survival. It was about standing up when everything and everyone tried to knock you down. That moment didn't just shake his supporters. It shook the nation. People who hadn't voted in years registered that night. The rallies grew. The energy surged. Endorsements flooded in. Within minutes, Elon Musk publicly endorsed President Trump, wishing for his rapid recovery. Musk's endorsement immediately dominated media headlines, leaving journalists scrambling to respond.
After he was hit, former President Trump got up and said, fight, fight, fight. I think what we're hearing from people is that's not the message that we want to be sending right now.
Donald Trump and the people around him perceive themselves to be under threat. And that's all that matters. That is not legitimate. That is wrong.
Suddenly, Trump wasn't just a candidate again. He was something more. He was the symbol of a movement that was too big to kill. 2 days later, July 15th, Milwaukee, the Republican National Convention.
He walked into that arena to everybody cheering as loudly as they possibly could, with a bandage on his ear. And he had this kind of humble attitude about him. And he seemed almost overwhelmed by the reception.
And it wasn't just a political moment, it was personal.
And then he walks up into the box where he's greeted by his family. And that was really such a moment where both of these things came together. You know, his personal life, these people who had been there for him through all of the trials and tribulations, and also then being surrounded by thousands of delegates who were ready to get him nominated and back in the White House because he had unfinished business to do.
Trump walks on stage, bandaged but unbroken, and accepts the nomination.
Friends, delegates, and fellow citizens, I stand before you this evening with a message of confidence, strength, and hope. 4 months from now, we will have an incredible victory, and we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country. Together, we will launch a new era of safety, prosperity, and freedom for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly. As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States. Thank you.
Musk stood with Trump, calling for courage, innovation, and a return to greatness. This isn't just politics as usual, Musk declared. It's a movement for America's future. The party wasn't divided, it was unified. Not around slogans or endorsements, but around survival, justice, and something you could feel in your chest. Trump wasn't handed the nomination, he earned it. In the courtroom, in the streets, and on that rally stage in Butler. And now, the comeback was fully underway. November 5th, 2024, Election Day. The media called it tight. Pollsters hedged their bets, but the people had already made up their minds. Lines wrapped around schools and churches. First-time voters showed up with fire in their eyes. In county after county, precincts broke records. And then, as polls closed, everything turned red.
And so going in, Republicans and conservatives across the country felt pretty good. They were ready to celebrate, but there was an air of caution until the results were finalized. And as they started rolling in, Donald Trump started putting wins on the board.
We all knew going into that election night that unless they cheated, and they could very well have cheated, we knew Trump was going to win, and they knew it too. So it was almost sort of a resignation.
Former President Donald Trump will win the state of North Carolina.
And CNN can project that Georgia will go to Donald Trump.
Former President Donald J. Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania, and thereby he is on his way to becoming the 47th president of the United States. The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
An unprecedented campaign concludes with Donald Trump once again becoming president-elect. And just moments ago, the Fox News decision desk can project that President-elect Trump will, in addition to everything that he's got so far, claim Michigan. It completes his sweep of the 3 blue wall battlegrounds as he did back in 2016. Trump recapturing the White House after a strong performance in all the battleground states that could potentially see him win all 7 of them, though 2 remain uncalled at this point.
That advantage that Trump has here in Nevada, there's still vote by mail to be counted here, but there's enough vote in right now to say this is looking, what Trump's doing right now is something a Republican really hasn't done in Nevada in about 20 years. Not enough to call a state or anything yet, but the Trump folks have to be feeling very good about what they're seeing in Nevada.
President-elect Donald Trump now announced winning Nevada, as President-elect Trump has officially flipped Arizona, adding to his historic win.
Trump sweeping all 7 battleground states, lifting his total number of electoral college votes to 312, the most won by a GOP presidential candidate since 1988.
And by the end of the night, it wasn't a question of if Trump had won. It was how big. CNN went quiet. MSNBC stalled. But the numbers didn't lie. The red wave wasn't just real, it was total.
You know, what was stunning about that night was the fact that he swept all of the battleground states.
The win was overwhelming. He won every single swing state. He broke down the Democrats' blue wall for the second time. And he won the popular vote, something Republicans hadn't done for decades.
In Florida, Trump took the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And, winning the popular vote was very nice, I will tell you.
And this cathartic explosion of success that we all felt, that we did it. We knew that the only way Trump could win was if it was too big to rig. And that's what we delivered.
But most of all, I want to thank the millions of hardworking Americans across the nation who have always been the heart and soul of this really great movement.
And so we suddenly recognized, even when they do all the shenanigans that they always do, if there's enough of us and we work together and we keep our eye on our prize, we can actually defeat them. And boy, did we ever.
This will forever be remembered as the day the American people regained control of their country.
The crowd was electric. Flags waved. Chant after chant filled the air. And it wasn't just Trump. The GOP took the Senate, took the House. Conservatives didn't just win. They took command. This wasn't a nail-biter. It was a rebuke. The American people had looked at what the left was offering and said no, loud and clear.
It was a resounding rejection of what the left had become, the insanity that they were forcing down the throats of normal, everyday people with the force of the federal government.
There was something about that night and the speech that he gave that sort of resonated with us, because we had all been through 2020 before, what a devastating night that was. And we had been through this extraordinary, unprecedented election process where we were all forced to mail in ballots or put ballots in drop boxes. We were forced to do all the things on an election in America which we were told you should never do because it makes the election, easy to rig. And then we get to 2024.
From November to January, the gears turned fast. Trump didn't just build a cabinet. He assembled an all-star team.
So once Trump won, there was no wasted time with getting the ball rolling. He had 4 years to plan his next administration, and they basically took over the White House before they even got in.
You know, from the moment the transition team took over and started picking various cabinet secretaries and deputy assistants to whatever, there was an obvious signal set that they had a plan in place, that they had been down this road before. They now knew how a White House worked. In a weird way, the 4 years in the wilderness actually helped them re-energize, re-strategize, and be ready to hit the ground running.
And less than 24 hours after he was victorious in November, he named Susie Wiles, his campaign manager, as his chief of staff. She would be a key component of making sure that the people he was going to pick for his cabinet would be on board with his agenda and not cause him any problems similar to the ones that he saw in his first term. Then the cabinet picks and the talk and the rumors about who would be what and all the jockeying down at Mar-a-Lago, people flying in to meet with the president, meet with Susie Wiles, meet with other people who were doing the vetting for these positions, and names started coming to the top. And then, of course, the controversy. The controversy started with some of the people the president had thought about nominating and eventually did.
Kash Patel, tapped to lead the FBI, sparked outrage with his calls to dismantle the deep state. Tulsi Gabbard, picked for Director of National Intelligence, faced her own firestorm, a former Democrat who rebuked the party's extremes and threatened the establishment. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., another ex-Democrat, was named to spearhead public health policy, promising to make America healthy again by targeting food sources and reforming pharmaceutical practices. Marco Rubio for state, Pete Hegseth for defense, firebrands, doers, names that didn't just fill slots, they meant action. There were no reaching across the aisle photo ops, no lectures about unity, just a clear message. We've got work to do.
This transition was flawless. You know, the last cabinet secretary picked was something around Thanksgiving. We were still in November, and they had already named their entire cabinet. That's extraordinary. And they had a plan in place. They knew exactly what they were going to do, and they knew how they were going to go about doing it. And it sent a signal to all of us. It's like, okay, game on. We're going to hit the ground running on day one. And they were also prepared to get rid of the people inside the government who undermined them last time. They had identified the deputy undersecretaries, the acting this and the acting that, who, while confirmations were going on, really kind of screwed things up and set the table for disaster in some respects for the first term.
The Senate hearings turned into battlegrounds. Democrats grilled, Republicans rallied, Trump doubled down. These were his people, loyal to his vision, no matter the cost.
That sent a signal to all of us that this was a whole new administration, a whole new approach that Trump was taking and his team was taking to the presidency. And boy, on day one, they sure were ready to go.
And with the Senate locked in, there was no one to stop them. While the media rehashed old narratives and made up fake stories,
Project 2025. It's planned to turn Donald Trump into a dictator.
Trump and his team were already laying the groundwork. Executive orders were drafted, policies prepared, a roadmap sketched with ink and urgency. This wasn't a transition. It was a launch pad. And January 20th was the ignition switch. Washington, D.C. In the rotunda of our nation's capital, Trump stepped forward, hand on the Bible. And with that oath, the war for America's future moved from rallies to the resolute desk.
In a weird way, the fact that it was so cold, it was like 10 below. It was super cold in Washington. It was so cold that we had to move everything indoors. And in a way, that sort of added to the majesty of it. I know we didn't get the big roaring crowds and fill the mall and that great scene and everything, but in a strange way, we got a more statesman-like scene. We had this incredibly elegant, incredibly serious, and incredibly beautiful inauguration.
The president made clear in his remarks to the nation, his first moments as the next president after just being sworn in, that the management of the decline of America was over.
There was no hesitation, no slow walk. On day one, Trump signed order after order, each one slicing through the bureaucratic rot that had slowed this country down for years.
President Donald Trump wasted not a single second when it came to getting started on his first 100 days in office. After he was sworn in at the U.S. Capitol, he headed right to the Oval Office and started signing executive orders. And he let the press in, the media was back. He was there at the Resolute desk for hours, and that breakneck pace continued day after day after day.
And then when they made their way over to the Capital One Arena and they had their sort of indoor parade, I mean, will we ever forget the pageantry, the theatricality of setting up that little desk and having Donald Trump sign his first executive orders in front of a roaring crowd of 20,000 MAGA maniacs? And then he starts tossing his pens out to the crowd.
And with every pen toss, the crowd roared louder. 20,000 voices echoing through the arena, a testament to the movement that brought Trump back to power.
And you saw this incredible scene where the American people were participants in our government again. That we did that. We got this guy in office, and now he's delivering by signing these executive orders with us and letting us participate in that. Suddenly, we felt part of the government again. We felt like we had a voice and we had someone representing us.
It was a moment of pure showmanship. Trump, the entertainer turned leader, proving he understood the stage of the presidency.
It was hugely symbolic. I'll always say about Donald Trump, I think because of his years in New York and coming from the entertainment world, that he understands the importance of the theatricality of the presidency. It is an incredibly demonstrative position. George Washington understood that from the very beginning. You demonstrate something, you represent something, and you gotta give the people the show that inspires them to rally around your agenda. He gets that, and that day proved it.
Day one wasn't just about spectacle. It was about dismantling the policies that had crept into every corner of the federal government.
The president was focused on a number of executive orders to reverse the damage that the Biden administration had done, get rid of these ridiculous embedded policies that had been put in place by the Biden administration, but also the Obama administration before that, about DEI, racial quotas, things that the federal government should not be doing. The State Department, for example, putting an X if you didn't want to identify as male or female.
Trump's orders slashed through these policies, signaling a return to common sense over ideology.
And this idea that the president had to go in and spend his time reversing these absurd policies that had made their way into every aspect of the entire federal government shows you just how out of control the left had taken the government and used it for their own political purposes, not to serve the American people.
The border closed tighter than ever. Deportations began, and fast.
Well, a majority of those executive orders that he signed on day one had to do with the border. It had to do with border security, it had to do with border patrol, it had to do with immigration policy, enforcing immigration policy properly, and empowering law enforcement at the federal level to apprehend and deport criminals in this country.
So President Trump's promise to shut down the invasion at the border was something that he accomplished immediately. Previously, Democrats and the Biden administration had argued that they needed big, comprehensive amnesty legislation to stop people from coming over the border by the millions every single year, by the thousands each day, and hundreds of thousands of them being unvetted potential terrorists who come into the country.
In a few moments, the Laken-Riley Act will become the very first bill that I proudly sign into law as the 47th President of the United States.
Thank President Trump for the promises he made to us. He said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken. And he hasn't. He's a man of his word. We trust that he will fight for the American people. There's no amount of change that will ever bring back our precious Laken. Our hope moving forward is that her life saves lives.
Laken was a brilliant and beautiful 22-year-old nursing student from Georgia. To her parents and family, she was everything in the world.
The Laken-Riley Act, named for a life taken far too soon, was signed. A new law that said, loud and clear, we protect Americans first.
And listen, everything about this second term is demonstrated in these first 100 days by how Trump attacked the border issue. It was not only symbolic of his ability to use government and just do things, not talk about it, not debate, not petition, not wait, just do things and understand something about our immigration laws. No new law was needed.
All we really needed was a new president.
And the number of people crossing that border goes down to a historic low, proving that everything they had said was a lie and that they deliberately allowed millions of illegal immigrants to cross into the country, unvetted, into American communities.
He proved on day one that we can secure our border by utilizing the laws and the law enforcement and the personnel that we have already in place. Not only did he prove that he could do that and he wasn't messing around and he was going to come through on that promise, he did something else. He proved that the previous administration was ignoring the law. He proved that the Biden administration consistently lied every single day about the border, about their claim that they needed new laws passed, the claim that the president needed more powers to enforce the border. They lied that there was even a crisis at the border at all until it was impossible to keep that lie going on. When Trump used the day one executive powers of the presidency to lock down that border, he proved not only that he was a great leader, but he also proved that his predecessor was a miserable, lying failure.
And also, he then implemented his deportation plan, and he's getting a lot of these very dangerous gang members out of the country. And yet you still have some Democrats trying to protest that, but the American people are watching, and they're happy to have those kinds of people out of the country.
There's two things about Trump's earliest victories, I think, that really resonate with me when I think back on those first 100 days, when I think back on the first 30 days. And it all has to do with images. The first one was Kristi Noem and Tom Homan, getting dressed up and going out with law enforcement and apprehending really bad people who were allowed into our country, allowed to stay in our country, and who were breaking our laws. And I know everybody's, it's just a photo op. Yeah, it's a photo op. It's an important photo op because that video got played all around the country and it sent two messages to two very important people. To we, the American citizens, who were tired of the crime and tired of the lawlessness and tired of the double standards, how the rules only apply to one group of people and not the other, it told us not anymore. Not anymore. We're back to being a country of law and order again, and it can happen that fast. But the other message it sent were to the bad guys. Listen, you're in this country illegally, you're breaking the law, you're a criminal, you got two choices now. You can sit and wait for Tom Homan and these badass ICE agents to bust down your door and take everybody in the house and send you packing, or you can politely leave on your own. But either way, you're getting out of here. That image was so important because you gotta let the bad people know that we're enforcing the laws too.
But Trump wasn't just eager to rid the country of violent and dangerous illegal aliens. He was eager to rid America of decades of waste, fraud, and abuse, and all those who contributed to it. Under Elon Musk's leadership, the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, took swift action to clean up federal agencies, delivering immediate results in transparency and accountability. On January 23, 2025, DOGE canceled $420 million in diversity, equity, and inclusion contracts across agencies like the Department of Education and HHS, exposing frivolous ideological spending that infuriated taxpayers. On February 15, 2025, DOGE terminated $6.5 billion in USAID contracts, including $20 million for foreign fertilizer and $2 million for gender-affirming healthcare, revealing rampant fraud in foreign aid. By April 23, 2025, DOGE claimed $160 billion in savings across 39 agencies. Everyday Americans were furious to learn their hard-earned dollars had been wasted. Meanwhile, Democrats were furious the grift had been exposed. While the rest of the world debated, Trump partnered with OpenAI to push forward a framework built to protect jobs, defend intellectual property, and keep China at bay. No lectures, no summit grandstanding, just policy implemented.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
By April 9th, Trump paused most reciprocal tariffs for 90 days, except for China, now hit with a 125% rate. Trump's bold movements showed his deep and abiding confidence, not just in America's economy, but in her people. And soon, confidence began to pay off. Jobs came back, foreign leaders blinked, and for the first time in years, American workers felt like their government was fighting for them. But Trump's wins weren't just economic, they were cultural too. In the East Room, surrounded by young athletes, he took a stand for fairness and tradition.
The other image that's always going to stay with me from the first 100 days was when Donald Trump was in the East Room and he was surrounded by all of those little girl athletes. You had 5-year-old soccer players. You had teenagers in high school who were playing volleyball. You had softball players at Little League. And they were all surrounding the table as he signed a very simple executive order that said, men, biological men, should not play sports with biological women.
It was a moment of celebration, but also a stark reminder of the cultural battles Trump was willing to fight.
That women's sports will finally be protected because we acknowledge there's a difference between men and women. And to see the joy and the enthusiasm of these girls being once again validated that yes, they're girls, they're women, and they deserve to have their own sports leagues. They deserve to not have to compete against men and boys in their leagues. It was so simple and yet so joyous and shockingly controversial when you still got people in this country, in this culture, and in the media who disagree with that simple notion. And there was one other aspect of that that I thought of as the father of 2 daughters. I realized that under the last presidency, and if Kamala Harris had won, that never would have happened. And it meant, set aside the competitive aspect of women's sports, set aside the dangers that women have to deal with when competing in a sport against a man, because we've seen that they can be harmed. I saw Donald Trump protecting those little girls and protecting their innocence just for a little while. And as a dad, it was kind of nice to see that the president had my back.
Our golden age has only just begun. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will never give in. We will never give up. We will never back down. We will never, ever surrender. We will fight, 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 and we will win, win, win. Together, we will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America healthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. I love you, Michigan. I love you. Have a good time. Thank you. God bless you all.